Good morning, everybody. In fact, good morning in Amsterdam, good afternoon if you're in Asia. If you're joining us from North America, then I suspect it's a very strange time of day for you. Before we start, could we quickly get everybody here to wave to their colleagues all around the world? And if you're online anywhere, just wave back to us from wherever you happen to be with your cameras. So a quick wave, everybody. Okay. Well, welcome to the ICCA Research, Sales and Marketing Program's now traditional Research, Sales and Marketing Program. Okay. I can see that in Thailand they definitely haven't been working hard enough. This is a new tradition. Each year ICCA picks on a topic in our traditional area of expertise, which is the International Association market segment. We have a debate at this Research, Sales and Marketing Program about the issues around that key issue, but we also invite our members and international associations all around the world to join in with us, to participate, to get their issues onto the agenda as well. I'd like to start by thanking our sponsors of the hybrid session, the Thailand Convention and Exhibition Bureau, TCEB, and of course all of our friends in Thailand who are joining us for sponsoring us for the second time, and also it's a long-term relationship, so we're really pleased by that. Also like to welcome my panel. We have some association executives and representatives of the outsourcing world, the PCOs, AMCs. Finn Raben, who is Director General of ESOMAR, which is one of the world's leading global associations for market research. We have Karen McMain, who is the President of the International Orthoptic Association, which I always mispronounce, which is one of the leading eye care global associations. And Jarno de Boer, who runs the European operations for CIMGlobal, a very successful core PCO and increasingly AMC-type service provider, working with a lot of different associations. Hello to our live audience of about 140 delegates from 36 countries around the world. In the most wonderfully funky conference venue, the Vestigastfabrik here in very sunny Amsterdam. And finally, of course, hello to all of our global audience. Today's topic, we're going to be talking about the future of outsourcing of services by international associations. Now, because we are a meetings association, our focus is, of course, primarily on meeting services, but we're actually going to address beyond that. We're going to be talking about publishing services, content management, membership recruitment, retention, communication, all of the issues that associations are dealing with apart from meetings as well. We're going to be talking about what services are currently being outsourced. We're going to be looking at what services are actually being brought increasingly back in-house by associations rather than outsourcing. We're looking at the rationales and the processes that they're going through to decide whether to outsource or whether to insource. And then, of course, very critically, we're going to look at what are the implications of this if you're a supplier in the industry. How should you be dealing with the marketplace? How should you be talking to the associations and also to their partners who are providing those services? And finally, of course, what are the new business opportunities that are emerging? What can you offer to associations that can actually improve their lives and make their events better and make them more successful in the way they operate? Now, before we actually put this session together, we arranged for some structured interviews with some international associations and with some PCOs and association management companies in different parts of the world to try and get a quick flavor of the issues, the concerns, and whether there are actually any differences or any mismatches between these two different groups, and to give us some food for thought to help to stimulate the discussion as we go forward. Now, here were some of the top line issues that came up. There was definitely a mismatch between the views about whether outsourcing was a good thing financially. We'll talk about that later, but you can guess which people thought it was a fantastic financial idea and those who thought that might not be such a great idea, but a definite mismatch there. There was also a mismatch about the perceived dangers of outsourcing for the relationship between the associations and their own members. Many of the suppliers didn't think this was an issue at all. Obviously, outsourcing isn't going to endanger the relationship between the association and its members, but for the associations, that was a really critical concern. They wanted to make sure that anything they did on outsourcing didn't damage that really critical relationship with their members. There was also, of course, some alignment, which was gratifying. One of those pieces of alignment was the role of outsourcing as a means of improving quality services. So whilst there was disagreement on finance, there was general agreement that this was a potential route to improve quality services. There was also alignment that there is a lot more to outsourcing than simply meetings. And this was coming from both the associations who were looking at a much wider range of issues around outsourcing, and increasingly also amongst the suppliers. They were no longer simply restricting themselves to traditional meeting services which were being outsourced. So alignment there that the market is changing quite significantly. And then there was another area which I kind of call confusion, which was about the trends. We saw this strange mix of more events being brought in-house by associations at the same time that there was a general view that there was more outsourcing happening, and also that there would be more outsourcing going on in the future. So this is an interesting area that I want to explore with my panel as we go forward. And final point on this was that the language used by associations and by the PCOs and AMCs tended to be extremely different. And maybe we'll explore that one as well, about cultural differences on the supply side and on the association side. So, turning to my panel now, I'll start off with Finn from ESOMAR. Now, when we've talked earlier, you said that the vast majority of your services are actually handled in-house.
Yes.
So maybe could you give our audience some background into that, and has this always been the case, or have there been changes in the last few years?
Well, and again, forgive me for my voice. As you can see, it hasn't improved that much overnight. My family were delighted. They threw me in a corner and they said, "Shut up." No argument, no talking back for the evening, so they were delighted. So my apologies anyway. In relation to our business, I guess, and specifically in relation to events, because we run somewhere between 8 and 10 events a year, it pays us essentially to keep it in-house. If you think that of those, let's say it's 10, that we're probably running 9 with an audience, a delegate audience of somewhere between 200 and 400, handling those in-house, or the commissions that we would pay to send it out of house, covers a salary or two. So the benefit to us is quite significant. Our large annual Congress, however, is one where we may not have the resource, we may not have the local knowledge, and therefore we do depend on using a CVB, PCO, or a DMC for that matter. Mm-hmm. And that has worked for us for a long number of years. The other, I guess, unique aspect about us as an association is that amongst our members globally, which would number about 5,000, a little shy of 5,000 individuals, and about 300 companies, we have representatives. So one of our members in each country puts themselves forward to act as our voice, if you like, in that country. So we can access quite an amount of local knowledge in establishing some of those smaller events.
And presumably a lot of your members in those countries also have very strong technical backgrounds in all kinds of ways. So they've got a range of services already that are sitting there potentially ready for use.
Indeed, because they, and in dealing with their clients, are either organizing other small meetings, are keeping on top of all the technological advances. So we have a substantial amount of input that we can benefit from in those occasions. So that's from the event side. However, we do outsource. For us, outsourcing is, the critical element is efficiency. This is nothing new to anyone, but if we can get better value for lower cost and greater efficiency, then outsourcing is a viable option. If it isn't, then we don't do it.
So despite the survey results, finance is a key issue for you in that area, but what about
I guess we would look at that somewhat with a financial eye to say what investment would we require to make in order to have the technological support or the expertise. So to give you an example, our content management. And again, just for background, at all of our conferences, if a speaker is on stage, there is a written paper behind what they present. And we've been building up that library of papers for donkey's years. And therefore, that library of information is incredibly important to us. And we give universities access to it, et cetera, et cetera. So managing that content is both from a systemic point of view and a technological maintenance point of view, probably beyond our capabilities currently. So we outsource that primarily to a company or an agency called Walk, based in the UK. Equally, if we look at our website maintenance, that we would outsource as well. So, to build up the kind of technological resource or to make the investment into the business here to be able to achieve the same level of knowledge and expertise in allowing us to do what we want to do with our website just would be too big an investment for us at this stage. Yeah. So we do outsource.
So although it is, there is finance involved there, it is critically about the having the quality to deliver some very sophisticated services and the challenge of investing in that internally to make it. Okay. Yes. Okay, let me turn over to Karen. When we were talking earlier, you said that you're a big fan of outsourcing, and it's something that you do a great deal of. So share with the audience some of the background to your strategic thinking on this issue.
Sure, Martin. Our organization we have 10,000 members, but we're largely run by volunteers. We have a council of management where we have a representative from each of the national associations that make up our association. These individuals are very devoted to the profession and advocating, advancing it, but they also have quite heavy workloads already in terms of their clinical load or their research load, and perhaps not the expertise that's required to carry on the functions of putting on our Congress that happens every 4 years. And at this point, we are only having a Congress every 4 years. We don't have an annual meeting that we hold for members, so there is probably not enough work to justify having in-house staff on an ongoing basis. So at this point, we're outsourcing quite heavily. Yep. We outsource for our website. We rely on professional Congress organizer because they would have the on-site contacts. Our meeting takes place all over the world, and it's very nice if we can have somebody who's familiar with all of the local expertise that can help us pick a venue, that can manage our registrations, that can organize our audiovisual.
Well, one of the things you told me earlier, which struck me as something that many of our audience around the world won't be aware of, is that you actually do a certain amount of outsourcing with sister associations, not just with suppliers. So.
Well, what we have done in the last 2 years is we've become member associations of larger organizations, international organizations that are made up of 30 to 40 associations each. And those associations are looking at holding joint meetings. So we have been exploring possibilities of doing that. There has been some joint meetings held with some of those members. And yes, we are looking at how we can outsource together to accomplish those meetings.
Okay, so some of the services are being provided by the other associations themselves, but collectively you're also looking at bigger contracts, more comprehensive, so that you're not individually having to negotiate and perhaps not having all the information and wouldn't say maybe the skill set even, to be able to understand how to get the best deal, whereas collectively you've got a lot more power. So that's a very important message if you're providing services, that the clients are starting to get much more sophisticated in their approach to how do they negotiate so that it doesn't become this very mismatched, asymmetrical type of relationship. And how do you have any kind of process for evaluating the quality of the organizations that you're working with? Is that a worry for you or a struggle to work out who is actually the best which is the best organization to partner with?
Well, that's a good question. That's something we have to be quite concerned about. And one of our biggest concerns when you partner with somebody is whether you lose your own identity when you work together to put on a meeting in cooperation. So somewhere you should still have your uniqueness still shining through in that meeting. So that we're
I think
still
that
working out.
resonates with the survey results, where the associations were saying, whatever we do, there is no way we want to risk the relationship that we have with the members. And I think that often many suppliers forget that. And that gives me a nice little segue into Jarno, where CIMGlobal handles a lot of core PCO work. You do AMC services. Do you find that clients are worried about this, or is it part of your business model to think about the real objectives of the associations and how to help maintain their relationship with their members?
Absolutely. I think this is rather key in whatever we do, because we try to work a lot on long-term relationships with a lot of clients. In the end, it is rather simple. We can only be successful if we adapt the ways and the culture of the association, because it's, in all honesty, statistical people are different than cardiologists, and doctors are different than engineers. So we adopt, we speak also quite a lot with our clients about their structures, their expectations, because I think perception is one of those things. Well, it came also out of the survey about same topics, different views. It's how do you perceive it? What do you prefer to contact with your members? and how do you want to streamline it in a way that you're comfortable with it, it's doable, and you get the results that you want, because that is key in all interaction.
What about the findings in the survey that talked about the PCOs and AMCs generally felt that offering outsourced services gave financial advantage to the clients, the associations, yet the associations generally didn't see outsourcing as a way to save money, but they saw it. So do you think that's something that in general amongst your colleagues who are offering these services, people tend to only focus on the money side, or actually when you're talking to clients, is that the question they're asking? Are they saying, how can you save us money?
It is one of the questions that sometimes appears, and I think it's two ways, because from a meetings perspective, there's the buying power, there's the negotiation skills, there's the ongoing contact with all kind of suppliers where you can use your strength in getting the best possible deal for your association. On the other end, there's like the staffing issue. Does an association need to have staff available within this office, or are you going to outsource it? And I think on the second end, it's mainly for me scaling, because generally, if you have staff in the office, they're there an average amount of hours a week. But when we work on projects, it's always at peaks and lows and highs. So we have weeks that on one project 7 people work. Well, a week later the deadline is gone. It's dealt with. There might be one person just looking after and taking care of the pending items. And I think that kind of scaling, and yeah, if you work 1,500 hours a year, it doesn't come over 52 weeks, isn't it, the work? So that's mainly where the flexibility and financial benefit comes from, I would say.
Okay. So, by the way, I just want to remind the online audience that if you've got questions or if there are issues that you want us to talk about in relation to outsourcing, please do send those through to our online moderator. And also in the audience, if you've got a question later on the stage, do raise your hand. We've got people with microphones who can run around and put the microphones to you. So don't be shy if you've got something you'd like to ask the audience about any issue of this, whether it's to do with future direction of outsourcing or particular services that you think could be better supplied in that way. We're going to switch over to look at future trends and where the market is going, and talk a bit more about implications for dealing with clients. But at this stage, I think, Gerrit, we're going to be introducing a poll online for our audience to talk about which services they recommend that associations should definitely outsource.
Yes,
Gerrit.
definitely. And I'm going to help you introduce that, because this is going to be a live poll on the topic, kind of similar to the things we asked and the survey results you shared, that we want both you and the online audience to participate. But before that, and you just saw them on the screen already, we tried to do this online wave. I quickly want to report to you guys here physically in the room, we currently have about over 200 people watching us with all these cameras from all over the world. We have people in Pattaya, where there's a parallel ICCA workshop taking place. That's what you're seeing here right now. They have a slight delay, so they probably hear that they're on stage in about 10 to 15 seconds, and then they'll maybe jump up. But we also have people in Moscow, in Iceland, in Lithuania, in Bangkok, in Taiwan, all over the world. People are actually now sitting together watching the same content as you guys are. So I think that's pretty cool. And now with this whole ICCAworld community, we're going to try to get some impact and results from you. Can you grab your online devices, your smartphone or tablet, anything with a web browser? And could you go to www.sly.do/ICCAworld? And we're going to do 2 questions. This one is a practice question, so we kind of see if you can all get this down. So you go to your web browser. I guess we can do this on stage as well. You don't have your phone with you. Open your web browser, enter the following URL, www.sly.do/ICCAworld. And you should see this question appear. What type of organization are you working for? Again, this is the quick practice question. And then we're going to really polling. And so this is both for you physically in the audience right here and the people at home. Guys, you can join as well. Right next to your video player, there's this voting tab. Click vote, and please let us know, just to practice, what are you working for, and then the real question about outsourcing is about to come up. We can quickly see on the counter how many people we have participating. We're going over 100. Let's see in the room if everybody is getting this done. Since we're here all on this hyper-speedy Wi-Fi, this should be no problem, right? Thanks to the Westergasfabriek, this is really well organized. Okay, I think we got it all down. If you're still starting up, this was the practice question. Let's go to the real question, something we really want to know. If I can get the next question up, this is what it's really about. We want to ask you, both here in the room and online, what you think, which services do you believe international associations should definitely outsource? And this is a multiple answer question. So you can tick multiple answers and then push the send button all the way on the bottom. Right? And in that sense, we get a crowdsourced view of what we, both as association executives watching and you as suppliers here in the room, think that are typically definitely services that every association should outsource. And that is some interesting insight, both for the association executives as for us as suppliers, as where market potential could be. So again, you can tick multiple answer options, and then you have to push send on the bottom of your screen. Don't forget to push that button, otherwise your answers won't come in. Well, we see this is already happening. I think, Martin, we'll let this run for a bit. The question stays open, so if you're still thinking about it, keep the votes coming, but I'll give the stage back to you. And we do have our first questions coming in, so I'll come back later to ask them.
Just let me know whenever they're coming
exactly,
in.
Exactly.
We'd like to pick those up.
Enjoy.
It's interesting there that the most logistically heavy element is the one that gets almost everybody's vote. I just want to start talking about the future of the way that outsourcing is going and address that in terms of, first of all, to Jarno, to what extent do you think the market is shifting from a provision of services angle to a strategic partnership angle? So how important is it for associations to get input into that strategic side and management of that strategy?
I think it's one of the key items and the biggest changers in the current marketplace, that from arranging a venue, it's still very important. But as we perceive it internally, as a company, for us, that's more the commodity. That is something we have to do, and we have to do it right. As simple, because it's absolutely key to the success of an event. But once you look at an association in a broader picture, it comes much more to how does the meeting fit into your strategy, in your communication model. There might be some competitors, international, nationally. Well, Finn is a good example. It started European, it's now global. So for other destinations, how do you deal with that? And I think that step from logistics to consultancy into strategic meeting management, that's the key, where a lot of associations can have additional benefits from their partners out there.
And what about the technology side? Because I was talking with Roger Tonder a while ago, the head of MCI, yep, who was saying that a much higher proportion of the revenue of that whole company than any of us really imagine is coming now through provision of production services, technical services, video, hybrid meetings, virtual conferences. Yep. And the traditional side of things is not really adding anything to the bottom line. It's being done almost at break even, yep, just because it happens to be there and it's pure commodity. Is that something that resonates with you?
We see it as well. There is more like the logistics, because it's getting a commodity product in a way. There are many PCOs, there are qualifications within PCOs, AMC. So you see that's the basic, and then generally margins go down. That's what happened to every market in the world, I think. So we see it as well with the additional service, because we are in the middle of the meeting industry. We're in the middle of everything that's happening, that you can add value in different ways. And technology is one of those things that is for every association, because it changed that rapidly, it changed that quickly. It's so difficult to grasp it with a small group, because you have a different focus area. For us, that's one of the main focus areas where we develop ourselves in, where we see change, where we can help association implement those kind of elements. So that's really where we're shifting. And again, the implementation is, for me, the strategic field as what do you want to achieve with it, and how do you want to use it.
Okay. And Finn, you were talking about the critical importance of content management and how you look after the intellectual property of the organization. Are you worried that whether you would give away some of the crown jewels if you were to outsource more strategic input? And are you actually investing internally in your own staffing structures to create stronger, higher level guys who can actually manage all of these more complex assets?
I think our fear is less around giving away intellectual copyright. I think our bigger fear is the distribution thereof, so of the content itself. I mean, if I may just, it's probably known to all of you, but meetings generally, like our Congress 10 years ago, 15 years ago, would have been attracting, 2,500 people. Nowadays, it attracts somewhere between 1,100 and 1,500. Partner programs have largely died out. The conferences that we run that are quite industry specific have dropped in numbers to about half. But if we put it on live stream, or if we ensure that the content can be distributed thereafter, you'll find that the uptake is by a factor of 3, 4, 5, and 6. So the distribution of the content, I think we will still retain the copyright, but the distribution of the format in which the distribution is, or which the content is distributed, is changing. And I know we spoke about it a little bit about 6 months ago. We have found that the live stream and a subsequent video on demand library has proven wildly successful to allow people to get access to it. And we made a big mistake, by the way, initially. We concentrated all of our energies on getting the live stream itself, the physical live viewing. But of course, we found out that if we're hosting a conference in Jakarta, it's unlikely that people in Houston, Texas are going to be up at 3 o'clock in the morning, or indeed watching the conference for 2.5 days on their computer screen. Oh God, I have to watch the conference. It doesn't work that way. Whereas it's the video on demand afterwards that has proven to be, if you like, the oh gosh moment for us.
But the key partners that you are working with in terms of delivering this and the outsourcing, those are not traditional meeting suppliers.
Not at
Not
all.
at all. And I think, do you anticipate that you're going to end up working with more non-conference people on issues? Because content management, traditionally in our industry, is seen as something that comes from the live event, and therefore the live event suppliers are the ones to provide it. But what you're saying now is that actually the model is going the other way around, that you're looking at communication specialists, technology companies, people who may not actually have live event expertise at all. Is that fair?
Yes, I think yes, that is a fair point. For example, the supplier that we're currently working with in getting that live stream, and so if you bear in mind that most presentations will have somebody on a podium saying something along with slides, getting a system which will allow you to either fast forward or move back in time of both the video and the presentation slides is not always easy to find. And to find a system that can be embedded very simply into your own website becomes even more challenging. So we currently work with a company that actually supplies universities. And it is they who have these systems that allow you considerable flexibility in moving the timeline of the content. And they host the video content for us on their library as well. Because again, they've got thousands of millions of terabytes or gigabytes, whatever it is that can supply.
I think a general message for our members, ICCA members, suppliers around the world generally, is you have to get away from your traditional way of thinking of how you provide your services. I think you also need to be looking very carefully at other potential partners that you can work with who've got complementary skills, who may not be coming from the live meeting side, but you can plug into their services. And I'm sure, Jarno, you do a lot of project management of different suppliers. So although the client is just dealing with you, you're the gateway to all these others.
And not only that, it's also for us finding strategic partnerships with suppliers that are already there. We had yesterday quite an interesting discussion with Yvonne from the RAI, that they have big marketing teams because they market. They have a direct influence in attracting as many delegates as possible, the same as the association and we have in those kind of events. So creating those kind of teams that work jointly together instead of, oh, I'm supplier A, I'm supplier B, and I'm supplier C, because I think then you're lost. If you think that you can do it on your own, I think then...
You raise another interesting point there, and that is that traditionally in the business, we've thought of the primary providers of outsourced services as being the PCOs or the association management companies. You mentioned the RAI. There are a lot of venues out there who've got expertise in all kinds of areas who are increasingly thinking, hey, we can be the strategic partners for the associations. It doesn't need to be delivered by a PCO. So there's quite a trend in the industry now of big-scale venues with very strong, especially technical and technological skill sets within their offering, trying to become a project manager for a much wider range of the services than the association clients are used to dealing with through venues. Everything from hotel management systems to registration systems to exhibition services to all the technology provision that allows the management and the distribution channels of the live content. So increasingly, I think there's going to be a lot of competition between PCOs and venues coming up. And Karen, you said something earlier that you yes.
Because obviously we promised this is an interactive show.
Yep.
And we see online that there's quite some buzz going around a specific topic, if I may steer the discussion a bit. Because this year we have a new feature that some people can ask questions and then other can like those questions. And these questions are getting a lot of likes. As we know, we have a large audience in Asia at the moment. And they say that in Asia, the associations are not quite used to or familiar with outsourcing. And they would like to know from maybe our association clients, although you're not based in Asia, if you have any ideas how they can motivate and warm them up to outsourcing and what the key issues in that are.
Wow, okay. Interesting. One of the biggest trends over the last few years has been the the growth of regional offices set up by association management companies in Asia, in Dubai, in markets which are perceived to be developing. These management companies, AMCs, are very active, very well established in North America and in Europe. But what they saw is that they were actually losing some market share to associations which, like Finn, were bringing services in-house. But what they realized is that many of those associations did not have the capability of managing relationships with potential members or potential sponsors or people they wanted to sell to in locations such as Asia or in the Middle East. And so there's actually an opportunity even for the self-managed associations to sell or to go into outsourcing in markets like Asia. So my advice to our friends in Asia would be to build relationships with the AMCs that are setting up across the region. Because the closer you are to them, the more likely it is that they will be providing market intelligence and information on events and programs which are being run by the North American and the European-based associations. So that would be one of the first points. I think that also the homegrown associations in Asia are still growing to maturity. It's going to take some time before it gets to the same level of complexity that exists in Europe, for example. But the growth in sophistication over the last decade has been quite remarkable. So I think that you're going to find the same issues we're talking about now globally becoming more relevant within Asia. Do you have many members in Asia, Karen?
We do, yeah.
Yeah. And do they get involved in your global event, or do you also run programs for them in Asia?
No, they get involved in our global event, and we actually have had our Congress previously in Japan.
Okay, but you don't run separate programs in Asia?
No, we don't. No, just one program.
Yeah. Whereas Finn, I know you've been in China, you've been all over Asia.
Yes. I think the other point that is critical for us, and I mentioned earlier about numbers dropping off, I'm not sure to what extent it might be true of all industries, but certainly in the market research industry, you'll note that international travel tends to be cut back upon, so that potential delegates are, it's not that easy to fly halfway across the world for a conference anymore. I think equally the crisis of the last couple of years, and thank goodness we're all out of it now, at least I hope we all are, equally impacted upon people's ability to move around the world and attend conferences. Knowing that, and knowing that particularly within our profession, and I'm sure with all the others, knowing and understanding the cultural differences is critical to ensuring that you're providing actionable insights to our end clients. We have always used the opportunity to set up conferences in Asia, in Latin America, and now in the Middle East, and in the next 2 or 3 years we'll be looking at putting one into Africa as well. So yes.
Yeah, and I think we've talked about this previous years, Jarno, about some of the major global association events are actually struggling for sponsorship and attendees, especially if they only take place every 4 years or 2 years. Yeah. And we're seeing a lot of annual events taking place regionally to fill that gap. Is that, Karen, actually, is that happening within your industry as a whole, not just with your association?
I think probably not just in eye care, but in healthcare in general, that's happened. So since the economic downturn, it's been harder to acquire funding. Delegates have much more difficulty. Researchers are having more difficulty acquiring funding, and certainly those that are employed in hospitals are having more difficulty getting funding to go to meetings. There's more competition as well. So we've had an increase in the number of meetings that are being held. And associations also have some difficulty in that our delegates at our meetings have much higher expectations now for the type of meeting that they go to. They do expect a rather high-level meeting with a lot of use of technology that previously we wouldn't have been responsible for providing.
Well, I think that goes very much into what Finn was saying about content being broadcast more widely, so that in the past, when the content purely took place in the location, you could get away with not delivering really, really top-notch, world-class content. Now, when there's online things to compare and you know much more about what's going on, I think you're facing a much tougher audience out there, which also has implications for the suppliers that you can't get away with simply running a cookie-cutter, ordinary type of conference anymore. You've got to be prepared to actually make the investment to deliver a world-class event, whether it's in Latin America or it's in the Middle East or it's in Asia, because the expectation of the audience is no longer that they will take a second-class event. What's your perception on that issue, Jarno?
I totally agree with that setup, because it started, I think, with the discussion, well, a conference is only a couple of days and there's time in between, before and after. But I think from an association's perspective, it just goes to, you can call it like qualified content, because content isn't like, you can't grasp it anymore, right? It's there, it's out there, it's everywhere. But to your members, it's the qualified content, the checked content, and how do you use it, and where do you make it available? Because also, coming back to what Finn said, live stream is I think, getting essential and more used. On the other end, time is such a difficult thing, even with people who want to attend the conference. If you couldn't make it these 3 days, you can't go next week because the event is not there. So that's with also from live stream to offering it later on and go through presentations, go through sessions that you would have liked to see. And I think that's where it adds value to.
Yeah, I agree, by the way. And I think, all credit to you, the fact that you've got however many, 8, 10, 12 hubs now seeking to benefit from the content, I think just underlines how important it is. The content is now the USP on every conference, but getting it out there and the distribution is one of the major challenges. The thing, I think I mentioned this to you before. One of our biggest headaches is ensuring, for example, that there's decent internet. We asked, funny little story. We were in Latin America last year, and I won't mention the hotel chain or the country, unless you buy me a lot of beer later on, but. We asked for a dedicated internet line because we needed to live stream, and we wanted to ensure that the meeting room had sufficient strength for the delegates because we have our own conference app, etc., etc. So we walked into the meeting room, and our contact person from the hotel turned around and said, that's your dedicated internet line. And we said, what do you mean? She said, it's that plug in the wall there. Nobody else is going to use it. It's dedicated to you. So, I talk about cultural differences and interpretations, but that was truly, as far as they were concerned, that was a dedicated internet line for us. And we then had to explain, no, we need, 20 megabits, blah, 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 blah. So, but it is critical now in order for us to distribute either via live stream or via hybrids to get the content out to the wider audience, given the restrictions on travel.
So actually a big opportunity for any company that's offering outsourced services is to become your strategic consultant to make sure that sort of thing doesn't happen. So we've done it ourselves, where we have a technology minder who's on our side, brought in as an outsource to interrogate at our Congress whether the technology is actually what we need, because they have the necessary language and capability to actually look into that. So there could be some very good business opportunities out there to become the outsourcing consultant to make sure that all of those deals are actually being set up in the right way. But I want to come back to this idea of competition and collaboration between associations going forward, because I think that this is something that, as an industry, we don't pay enough attention to. We're not focused so much on the strategic objectives of the associations, and we haven't really appreciated enough that associations are now facing a very different world from what they faced 10 years ago. 10 years ago, a typical association would regard itself as the natural monopoly provider of the content and knowledge within their area. Increasingly, they're now facing an astonishingly competitive environment where if they're a North American association, they're suddenly competing with a European association. I just spoke recently with the head of a European medical association who is investing about 600,000 euros, I think, on a big data project to ensure that they become the gateway to all the intellectual capital in the field that they're working in. Now, this is a very different environment and opens up very different opportunities if you want to be a strategic partner. But you can imagine to be a partner of a company, of an organization like that, is a very different proposition from providing logistics support to an event program. So my advice there is up your game and lift the strategic thinking that you're actually going into that. I see, Gerrit, you have some more questions or comments coming in.
We have another question going viral, so another topic. And I don't know if you guys in the audience, we don't see anybody stand up and raise their hand and put a question, but if you're still in that Slido/ICCAworld, you can also participate and vote questions up and down, right? You probably found that. The question is from Ian Sterling, he's watching, and it kind of has to do with the roles of the different people in the audience, kind of taking the discussion in a different direction. He's saying, how do associations source for a venue or destination, and do venues and convention or tourism bureaus play a role in that, and do they promote themselves as much? So this more has to do when we talk...
So this is about venue selection,
exactly,
decision
and the role
making.
of the convention bureau.
This was the subject of our 2-hour online hybrid session last year.
Yes, somewhat.
He's about 12 months back, but let's switch around slightly to talk about, well, how important can your partners be in site selection, decision making? What's the balance? So Karen, you work with PCO on your event. To what extent do you rely on the advice that you get from the partner, and to what extent do you control the decision making about which city and which major venue you're going to pick?
Well, we've done different permutations. So if you are working in collaboration with somebody else, then you're going to have to come up with a site together that you can both agree on, and that certainly happened with our Toronto meeting. So we had our International Congress in conjunction with the national meeting for the Canadian Ophthalmological Society. And so that was, we selected a date that they had their annual meeting so that we would have maximum number of delegates at our meeting, and they wouldn't have to be choosing between the two.
And that was a strategic decision that you made as an association. You didn't involve your partner in that,
right?
At that stage.
At that stage, no.
But sometimes you do rely on them.
Well, we've just started to do that. So we've recently become a member of the International Pediatric Ophthalmology and Strabismus Council, and while we have other reasons for becoming a member, this is a way that you can advocate globally for, with governments and with the World Health for our common interests. It's also a way to take a look at the meetings that we're doing as well, to ensure that the collective delegate pool that we're drawing from, we're not going to be putting on conflicting meetings, but also is there some way that we can cooperate on those meetings as well? So if there is a meeting being held, can we put on a subspecialty day that will be held in conjunction with that meeting?
Okay, and Finn, within ESOMAR, I know we've spoken earlier that there's a certain amount of decision making that takes place centrally. You decide pretty much where you want to go for the business reasons that you're addressing, but then how do you get down to the selection of the precise city, the precise venue? Where's your advice come from there?
Firstly, internally.
Okay.
Bearing in mind that we have a fairly lengthy track record of hosting conferences in different countries. So, as an example, I was chatting yesterday during the RFP workshop. Somebody proposed Berlin. I said, well, actually, we were in Berlin twice in the last 15 years. They were both fantastic conferences, but we should probably not go back to Berlin again. If we were looking at Germany, we'd probably like to try somewhere else. So internally first. Secondly would be our representatives. So those members of our membership community who are our eyes and ears in the country. And certainly in picking locations in Asia, they've been incredibly beneficial and useful to us. And if both of those options lead down dead ends, then we would certainly go to a DMC or a PCO in the country, I would say.
But also, I think you know ICCA, so you've met many of the Convention Bureau leaders, so you have a pretty wide network already to draw on in terms of which potential cities.
Indeed, indeed.
Okay, and Jarno, for your association clients, are you taking a stronger recommendation role than, say, 5 years ago?
Yeah.
Are they listening more to what you say, or are they telling you, we want to go there, and you just make it happen?
It's changed. It was like, okay, we want to go to that destination and let's start negotiating. By now it's due to bidding. And there might still be in the bidding guidelines, we like to receive bids from Asia or from Middle East or from Americas. So, but it changed dramatically because in the way you negotiate, because we're all speaking about partners, outsourcing and working together, I think you start really early. Because in a way, if as an association you decided on a destination already and on the venue, well, even budget-wise, almost half of your budget is covered already because a lot goes in there. So your negotiation part, your strategic advantage, your communication, how you want to approach it and what do you want to achieve with it by going to a destination. Quite a lot can be lost already just by the enthusiasm of going somewhere. And I think that's one of the things that adds a bit of strategy and another level in decision making. What do you want to achieve with your next destination?
I mean, the simple answer to the question that came up is that it's astonishingly complex, the different ways in which different associations make their decisions. Probably the easiest way of answering, rather than repeat an hour's worth of discussion from last year, is to refer ICCA members to one of the PDFs that we have available for members, called International Association Bidding and Decision Making. And that's actually in fact, it's also very relevant for all the international associations who are logged in and listening to us at the moment. It's a document that looks at all of the parameters relating to the decision-making process. It breaks down by time and all of the different stages in the process, from first calls for bids through to the actual presentation, everything in between. It looks at the different types of decision-making criteria. So the primary decision makers are logistics, which tends to be mainly a shortlisting issue. There are financial issues of all kinds. I think we had about 2 pages of different financial issues that should really be thought about. Most crucially, and this is where a lot of suppliers in the industries fall down, is the decision-making criteria based on the business objectives of the association. Are they trying to grow membership? Are they trying to spread programs into new markets? Are they looking for business opportunities? Are they looking for a destination which will help to fulfill their mission, whether that is training doctors or providing more midwives or increasing technological capability in particular parts of the world? And many suppliers fail to ask the questions related to those objectives, but that's really critical. And the fourth area of decision-making criteria is actually the political. These are the things you never see in an RFP or a bid document, but they actually determine a great deal of why decisions get made. So I strongly recommend that if you're an ICCA member or if you're an association, you can use this to benchmark and check your existing decision-making process, because we obviously want to improve it. And if you're an ICCA member, it gives you a way of identifying what is missing from RFPs, what is missing from bid books, because often it's the things which, as we've discussed in the sessions earlier in this program, it's the things which are not written down, which are missing, that you need to address in order to differentiate your offering, whether it's a destination or a venue, or it's a PCO offering a full outsourced service. So getting inside the heads of the individual association and finding out what makes them tick is the best advice, and there's no way you can give a short answer on that one. I hope I didn't go on too long there, Gerrit.
No, and I know it's almost 10 o'clock, so we should start to finalize, but I thought I'd jump in one last time, because something you guys said on stage just really ticked something off, and people are really onto it. Because you said about the destinations and the convention bureaus, James Lancaster is adding to the conversation. So are convention bureaus actually wasting their money on these expensive bid procedures and bid brochures, since you guys already know where you're going anyway? Maybe that's a last thing to comment on.
The short answer is no. No, I think James is missing the point there. The argument is that the convention bureaus need to be much smarter in how they approach associations. The key to success is to have done your research properly so that you know that Karen has an event every 4 years and that they're volunteer-led, but they're working with a PCO so that they talk with the partner PCO as well as with the association. In Finn's case, they know that they should be dealing with Finn directly, but they shouldn't be simply saying, come to my destination, because that's not what drives him. You need to do your homework. You need to look at whether you are actually offering something which fits in. I know that a lot of your events you like to have inside a large-scale hotel where people are networking 24/7. For other associations, that's not so critical because they're less into networking, they're more into the content of the education program. So they're not really in the business-to-business mold. If you do your marketing as a CVB that treats associations as a commodity provider or a commodity product, you will simply fail. The most successful convention bureaus are typically winning between 60 and 70% of the bids that they undertake. That means that the ones who are not doing their homework and not so successful are the ones who never actually publicize their ratio, because clearly if you have 3 or 4 in a shortlist and some people are winning 60 or 70%, you can do the maths.
If I may, perhaps just to reinforce that point, the destinations that we pick tend to be strategically decided upon at our board of directors. So they will say, okay, our annual congress has traditionally been held in Europe. 8 years ago, they said we'd like to try one outside of Europe. It went to Canada. Then 3 years later, our American membership became our biggest membership community. So we said we'd now like to ship one into the States. Now, we all make the mistake of saying, oh yes, let's go to America, forgetting that it is absolutely enormous. And therefore, picking the right location, which has good access for international travelers, et cetera, becomes the next set of headaches or challenges that you have to deal with. And in those cases, it is the CVB or the DMC marketing that is going to make us prioritize which cities and venues we're going to look at. Currently, there is a discussion going on at our board level as to whether or not we can take the Congress to Asia before 2020. So let's assume they say, yes, we'd like to do that and we'd like to go to China. Do we know where in China? No. We have run conferences there, but to run something on the scale of Congress, we will largely be depending on looking at the marketing and all of the material that is being produced by the CVBs for us to make our selection. So in response to the question, it's absolutely not a waste of money at all. So if that's of any consolation.
I would say it's also something that bidding is strategy and research. It's not sending brochures around the world, because if we receive bid books and they look wonderful, but they don't have a clue about the association will make a strategic decision to go to a destination, not based on very nice fancy pictures. Of course, there needs to be something to it as a local flavor, but you need to have an idea, why are we pitching for this, bidding for this project, for this association, and what can our destination, how can we add value to their project, to their strategy, to their long-term success? And I think that's where real value comes in from a CVB, from a good bid.
I think also those destinations I was talking about, which are winning 60 or 70% of the bids, are specifically targeting association meetings which align with their intellectual capital, their economic development strategy. So it's much more than simply a tourist and logistic argument. It gives another reason why that association can do better business, learn more about cutting-edge advances in that field, or at the other end of the spectrum, where the association can actually make a positive difference to a problem that's going on in that destination. Because some associations are very much driven by a mission to do good in the world. And if you have an absence of something, then that can be as big an attraction than if you have the most cutting-edge research and development institute.
Yeah, I'd also add that associations also look, have this feeling that anyone that is doing business with them is somehow representing the association as well. So it's very important for us to feel that whoever we're in business with, whether it be the venue or the PCO, understands us really well. And so that's why it's also so important for them to do their homework prior to contacting us. Yeah.
I think there's a big point in that it's no longer about outsourcing, it's about partnering. And if you are going to be a successful partner, then you have to align yourself with the values of the organization that you wish to partner with. It's very different from providing outsourced services, which you could do in a very commoditized, cold way. But it goes right back to the survey question where we had that mismatch of the language that was being used. When we got the survey results from the PCOs and the AMCs typically, it was very hard kind of technical type of language. The associations were looking for people who understood them. They were saying, well, we want to work with companies that actually get what we're trying to do and understand who our delegates are and understand what they're trying to achieve. And if we find partners who can understand that, we know that they're going to be much more successful at providing the right sort of services that will meet the outcome. So that's...
I just want to give everybody like one single tip and free advice. It's a very simple exercise, but open one of the bid books you recently sent in, look for the amount of times the client is mentioned, and look for the amount of times your city of destination is mentioned. And generally we see you're quite upset because it's all written about the destination, while you're sending it to somebody who has his own association in mind, and it's just a simple exercise, but it will be quite an eye-opener.
A related simple exercise to that is to go through the bid manual, remove the name of the client event, and give it to someone and see if they can work out whose event you were pitching for. If you're doing the same exercise for everybody, you are not going to win those bids. Look at the tone of voice you're using, reflect back to the association the type of concerns that they're addressing. How do you find out that information? Go on the internet. You know, it's been there for a while, and it's not difficult to find out what makes associations tick. Associations are constantly talking about the issues that concern them. There are blog posts, there are their websites are an incredible resource. It amazes me that so many suppliers will pitch for a piece of business without having actually bothered to spend a few hours sitting down reading the information about what is this organization they're pitching for. So a piece of advice for everybody in the room and beyond is please, please, please do your homework. Don't treat it as simply an exercise of what is the rotation pattern, how many people, how much money, how many five-star hotels, how many breakouts, how long should the coffee break be. Really try and understand who are these individuals who are coming. Are they students? Are they business leaders? Are they Nobel Prize winners? And what are they trying to achieve?
Usually they have their strategic plan on their website.
Yeah.
And part of their strategic plan will also be their plans for their conferences as well. So that's a good document to pull up and take a look to see what they plan for the future.
Yeah, absolutely. And it goes far wider than the issue of whether you can be a good outsourced provider. It goes into the whole sales, marketing, and bidding for international association events. The material that is required for you to be successful and be far more sophisticated in your approach is all sitting there waiting for you to access it. And beyond that, there are people who are both on the supply side and in the association community as well, who are much more interested in having a conversation about that issue than they are talking about whether you have a bigger or shinier plenary room than the other guy. How are we doing on time, Gerrit? Are we nearly...
10 o'clock.
We're there?
Yeah.
Okay, so just to wrap up, I'd like to, on behalf of... I'm going to wrap up now for the people in the room. If you're online, stay on, because we're going to hang on with a post-live event discussion online purely for you guys. So I'd like to say thanks very much for your attention this morning. I hope we've given everybody in the room both some new ways of thinking strategically about the market, new ways of thinking about how do you deal with the intermediaries and the companies like Jarno's. We were talking yesterday about how few people from the supply side have gone to talk to Jarno about advice of how to engage with the associations he works with. He's here, he's available. Online, I'm sorry, he won't be available for you, but if you're in the audience, do talk to him about these issues. It's very important. And please, I advise you, go away and look at all of the material you're using to engage with those associations. Are you using the right tone of voice? Have you reflected back their objectives and their concerns? There are ways to be very successful. Just before I wind up from this audience, I do just want to say that those of you who may have joined us online from the USA, I'd like to wish you a very happy Independence Day, which will be starting after you've had a few more hours sleep, I suspect, because I think it's between 1 and 3 or 4 in the morning. And I'd like to say a special hello to Juan Jose Garcia, who was on our panel last year and is the moderator over in Thailand, and to Kun Panga from Peach in Pattaya. We still remember very fondly holding our Congress over there in 2007. So thanks for all your support over the years, and thanks for hosting the program over in Thailand. Thanks for your attention. We'll say farewell. Thank you for my panel as well. Can we have a big round of applause for them? Thank you. And thanks also to Gerrit and Gerdy and to the Westergasfabriek for putting together the technology and for joining us. And we'll carry on the discussion online, so don't go away for there. But if you're here in the room, enjoy the coffee break. We'll see you at the sessions afterwards. Thank you very much.
How will you inspire the minds of many? Will you provide new perspective that will allow others to see a world full of opportunities? Will you create a voice that captures the imagination of a kingdom? Will you share a welcoming smile that has others feel like royalty? Will you bring the world together via the speed of sound or the hush of a jungle? Will a rich culture and the arts become the fabric of your attendees? Will you stimulate their senses with cuisine envied by the world? Will you forever change the definition of a meeting room and inspire creativity in the beauty of silence? Will you redefine the meaning of work-life balance and create a venue that will have attendees feeling forever connected? Create the moments that inspire the minds of many. Connect people, inspire the world. Thailand.